let's talk about carbon dioxide a little bit. We're back at the lungs again, right? Alveolus, pulmonary, capillary. Okay, and then we have our blood entering from the systemic circulation, which has a PCO2 of about 45. Okay, as we pass through the alveolus, this blood is going to equilibrate with the air in the alveolus, which we learned yesterday, has a PCO2 of about 40. Okay, not a very big difference, 40 to 45, but it's a difference nonetheless. So we're still going to have diffusion. CO2 is going to go from areas of high partial pressure to areas of low. So it's going to diffuse into the alveolus, which is what we want, right? Because then we can exhale that. So same pattern, different gas. As we go from the arterial end to the venous end, we see that our PCO2 drops, right, from 45 to 40. In other words, it equilibrates with the air in the alveoli. Okay, now, it's a small pressure gradient, but CO2 is much, much more soluble than oxygen is. So it means that a smaller concentration gradient will still accomplish the same gas movement. Okay, so we don't need as big of a concentration gradient. Now, if we zip off from here to the systemic capillaries, that's what's in the middle, okay, this PCO2 of 40 is now coming in here, going past the tissues. The cells will have a PCO2 of about 46. The interstitium will have a PCO2 of about 45. As the blood passes through this, it's going to equilibrate. So the PCO2 that leaves the systemic capillary is about partial pressure of 45 PCO2. Okay? This same blood then goes through the heart and back here. So that's our CO2 side. And this is, so it's diffusion of carbon dioxide at the lungs. That we equilibrate as we pass through the alveoli. Notice also that just like the arterial system, or the oxygen side, first third, right? We're pretty much done by the first third. Now, in states of exercise or disease, this curve is going to get longer, right? Because it's going to take longer to equilibrate if you are have a high oxygen load. So just like oxygen consumption has to affect blood flow in order to keep partial pressures of oxygen where it needs to be in the tissues, the same thing is true for CO2, right? When our tissues are busy, our CO2 production is higher. When our tissues are not busy, it's lower. So here what we see, here's blood flow again, percents, double, triple, quadruple, and so on. Here's our interstitial PCO2. All right, so at a normal metabolism, right, so we have a tissue that's working but not particularly hard. At a normal blood flow of 100%, well, here we are at about 45, right? Now, if we reduce the blood flow, okay, so we put a tourniquet on, we'll see that the PCO2 is going to start to go up because we're restricting the washout of CO2, right? So below 100%, we start to get increases in our PCO2. Now, above that, so if we double or triple our blood flow, notice that the PCO2 doesn't get any lower, right? So it doesn't do us any good to have 6 times the blood flow. Our PCO2 is going to stay at 40 anyway, right? All right, so that's at the normal end. If we make that tissue busy, we shift this whole curve to the right. In other words, it takes more blood flow to keep the same PCO2, right? So you can see here that, like, if we have 10 times normal metabolism, we should need 10 times normal flow, right, to get back down to 40. That's why our graph doesn't go all the way back down there, because it would be over here. But what typically happens is we meet somewhere in the middle. So like if a tissue is super busy, it might get 5 times more blood flow you are going to have a slight increase in the PCO2, but that's fine because new blood is coming in all the time, right? So yes, you have a little bit higher of PCO2, but you're still clearing it. If you can increase the blood flow enough, this will come all the way back down to 45, okay? Now, if you have a tissue that's at rest, we get the opposite effect. We need much less flow to keep the same PCO2. Because when a tissue isn't busy, it doesn't produce very much CO2, so it needs very little blood flow to stay in that 45 range. So when I talk about empty capillary beds are like these, where they have a blood flow of like 1/10 of what they could have, right? Or what would be normal for that tissue. So the rate of metabolism affects the amount of blood flow that's needed to keep the PCO2 of the tissues where it needs to be. Now again, this is controlled by autoregulation, right? Autoregulation dilates capillaries to affect blood flow in response to PCO2, right? So as PCO2 increases, capillaries dilate. That increases blood flow, which decreases PCO2. See? So proof that autoregulation works right here in the respiratory system.